Mick, good morning. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you, man. So, all right, let's kind of dumb it down and then go super smart. All right, I'll try to catch up with you, but kind of remind the audience what is actually changing today beyond, like, yes, the universities can pay the athletes, but just kind of give us a brief reintroduction to what's changing.
Yeah, the big change is really who's paying the athletes, and how that payment process is happening. The past, NIL compensation has been allowed for college athletes since July 1, 2021, 4 years to the day. The vast majority of the NIL compensation paid to athletes over those 4 years has come from boosters via NIL collectives. Like, people estimate around 85% of NIL compensation paid to athletes has come from boosters. There have been brand deals too, but most of it's coming from boosters. And that is shifting from the boosters paying that money to athletes via collectives to now schools directly are going to be paying the majority of NIL compensation going to athletes. And in a lot of cases, that money that schools are paying to athletes will still be coming from boosters. They just will give it to the school instead of giving it to an NIL collective. The payments are often referred to as rev share payments, but it's not always going to be athletics revenue that a school generates. It's actually being paid to the athletes. It can come from any source of revenue that the school's athletic program has, whether that is true revenue generated by athletics, ticket sales, whatever. It can come from donations from boosters. It can come from the university side, from tuition money, depending on what your state laws allow. And then the other big change, obviously, is now the athletes are directly contracting with the schools. And the agreements generally say that athletes are providing schools with a license to use the athletes' NIL in various ways. And sometimes they're also providing specific services for the schools. So that's where we're at starting today.
So, Mitt, though, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's just one way an athlete can get paid now, because if X sponsor who doesn't go directly through the school says, I want to give this guy X amount of, separate of what Texas A&M is doing to be a brand ambassador for us, I can do that. And that also has to go through the clearinghouse.
Yeah, so the school deals, they don't have to go through any type of clearinghouse. There's no review for those school deals. They do get submitted to the new College Sports Commission, but that's just to ensure that the school is staying within the new salary cap of $20.5 million that schools can pay to their athletes. And we're talking about third-party NIL deals, so any deal an athlete does with an entity beyond the school, there's no limit on deals athletes can do with third parties. The only limiting factor is the deals have to be submitted to this new entity, College Sports Commission, via NIL Go. If it's just a regular brand deal with some local business, let's say in College Station, Texas, that deal is probably going to sail through NIL Go. Where it gets a little more complicated is if a third-party NIL deal is with what this is referred to now as an associated entity or individual, which basically means a booster or a collective. If an athlete does a third-party NIL deal with one of those entities, then there's a little more strict review of the agreement. And it has to be for a, quote, valid business purpose, which really means a deal to promote the for-profit sale of goods and services, and then the deal has to be within the appropriate range of compensation. And so that's what NIL Go, which is being operated by Deloitte, is going to be looking at when you have these third-party deals submitted. But there's no limit, specific dollar amount of how much third-party NIL deals athletes can do. It's just if it's with a booster or collective, it's going to be reviewed more strictly.
All right, so let's say a booster owns a mom and pop place here in town, and the mom and pop place doesn't generate that much revenue, but is one of their side businesses, and they say, I'm going to give $4 million to this athlete to endorse my little place. How will that kind of be scrutinized and looked upon?
So if we're talking about a business that's owned by a booster, it's probably going to fall into the category of an associated entity. The settlement lays out to 5 different factors of how you can become an associated entity or individual. And generally, if you're a business owned by a booster, at least if you're a booster that's donated $50,000 or more to a school over your lifetime, which there, plenty of boosters have done that and then own businesses, your business is going to fall into the associated entity category. And so you're probably not going to be able to go and do a $4 million deal with an athlete. That will probably get flagged by NIL Go as not being within the appropriate range of compensation. But here's the big question. Who's to tell a business that doing a deal with whatever Texas A&M athlete is not actually worth $4 million to that business? That's what NIL Go is going to have to determine, and Deloitte is going to have to determine. And then it's up to the College Sports Commission, once Deloitte flags a deal, to then determine, all right, what are we going to do here? Are we going to tell the athlete they can't do this deal? Or if we do tell an athlete they can't do a deal, is the athlete not going to do the deal, or are they going to go to arbitration and try to prove why the amount they're being paid actually is okay? So there'll be lots of different scenarios that are going to happen with the third-party stuff now.
Mitt Winter with us here on TexAgs Live. There's already controversy too, right, with the $20.5 million. Isn't there plaintiffs that are calling for an audit? Am I right about that?
Yeah, so the plaintiffs' attorneys in the House settlement, they have the right to audit schools' finances. And so they've already, as of yesterday, asked to see some more school data, specifically referring to revenue generated from luxury suites and then what's termed as other operating revenue. I guess based on their review of the data that they've received from schools, they have some questions because there's big variances in these luxury suite revenue and other revenue categories. So depending on what they see there, it might be nothing. But if schools have underreported some of their revenue, it's possible that the salary cap on what schools can pay athletes should actually be higher than $20.5 million. And it sounds like if that's the case, it probably won't change this year, but it would change in ensuing years, possibly, which is important because for years 2 and 3 of the settlement, the amount being paid that schools can pay goes up automatically by 4%. But if we're talking about a higher baseline with 4% added to that, it's obviously going to be a higher number.
I mean, it felt like the Wild West, July 1st of 21, right? Like, and for years, it felt like it. Is it going to feel like a new version of the Wild West here in the beginning stages of this, or do you think it'll be calm until they find loopholes?
It's hard to say. I'm sure people have been thinking about loopholes already. So we'll just have to see how effective the College Sports Commission is at policing that type of activity. ADs and others have been saying that they're giving the College Sports Commission lots of power. They want them to investigate things quickly, and they want to punish people harshly if they find out they have been cheating or breaking the new rules. The hard part will still be they don't have subpoena power, so they can't just go out and investigate people. They're really going to be having to rely on people providing them information and then going out and investigating, which has always been the NCAA's problem. It's hard for them to detect when athletes were being paid under the table for so long. So we'll see how effective that is. They have hired 2 people now from Major League Baseball world, both attorneys, both versed in this type of investigative enforcement work. So they have good people there that know what they're doing. It's just going to be a question of, do they have the tools to do that effectively?
Mitt, help me understand what Kentucky's doing. They're spinning off their athletic department into an LLC, and is that potentially going to be a model that we see copied?
Yeah, I do think we'll see that more. So Kentucky, under their state law, they're able to create nonprofit LLCs. So basically, they've created this new LLC called Champions for Blue, I think, or Champions Blue LLC. And they're putting all of their athletic department assets into this LLC, which allows them to operate, as a business, as opposed to just part of the university. So it frees them up to do things more quickly. things that maybe would have more red tape at the university, they can, do it more efficiently. They have their own governing board with people from professional athletics and entertainment. So a little different lens on things than like your traditional, board of trustees at a university. So I do think we'll see more of that. Also, the new entity that they're forming is the entity that's going to contract with the athletes as well.
Do you see, I think last time we spoke, we talked about the potential future of these college athletes being employees. Do you still think that's a possibility, or is the NCAA going to try to figure out a way to not have that be the future?
It's a definite possibility. And I think unless there's a federal law that says college athletes cannot be employees, I think it's likely to happen. The question is when. There's one case pending, the Johnson versus NCAA case on that issue right now. There might be new cases filed on that issue. And I do think the fact that schools are now directly contracting and paying their athletes probably makes that employment argument stronger. Obviously, the NCAA and most of the conference commissioners, at least, are still of the view they don't want college athletes to be employees. There are now some ADs and others in college athletics who are on the other side. They do want the athletes to be employees. And there was a really good article that Ross Dellinger wrote yesterday where Tennessee's AD told Ross and others his plan where at least some college athletes are employees and how the collective bargaining would work. So there's definitely a split view on that right now in college athletics, where in the past, I think it was pretty much, 99% said we don't want college athletes to be employees. Now, I don't know what that percentage is, maybe 75-25, but people are realizing that, hey, to actually bring the stability we want to college athletics, maybe we need to make at least certain college athletes employees. So a lot of it's going to really depend on what happens at the federal level, like I mentioned. So we'll see what happens with the law there.
Last thing for you, Title IX, how's it going to be affected? What's the future going to look like with Title IX? And I think there's some cases going on right now.
Yeah, so there will probably be lots of Title IX litigation. There have already been 2 appeals to the House settlement filed with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals based on Title IX. And those are arguing that the way that the back damages, the $280 billion being paid out as back damages in the House settlement, the way that money is being distributed does not comply with Title IX because 90%-ish of that money is going to male athletes, football and men's basketball players. So we have that. And then looking forward, there's probably going to be a lot of Title IX litigation arguing that the way schools are paying out their rev share dollars does not comply with Title IX as well. It's a gray area right now. Depends on who you ask. You can get different answers on how Title IX applies. Some people think it applies the same way you're supposed to pay out scholarship dollars, which is about proportionally to your male-female student population. So if you have 50% male, 50% female, then you should pay out your NIL compensation that way. Other people think, no, this is not covered by Title IX. It's supposed to be revenue sharing. So if football generates the most revenue, they should get paid the most of the rev share dollars, which is the way most schools are doing that. So there will be litigation, and to get a final answer on that, it'll probably have to come from the courts.
Mick, great stuff, man. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Enjoy the 4th.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks for having me.